My brothers and sisters, there is a question that has followed me like a shadow. It whispers behind every victory, every bruised morning, every late-night walk home after the meetings finally end. A question I didn't know how to answer for years, not because it was complicated, but because it was too honest. If politics is supposed to serve the people, why does it push away the very people most willing to serve? I didn't arrive at this question easily. It came to me slowly, like a bruise forming under skin, spreading its purple truth where everyone can feel it, but no one wants to talk about it. You don't notice the bruise at first, not until the moment someone touches it, and politics touches it every single day. In the beginning, I thought I was imagining it. A small discomfort, a strange silence in rooms where decisions were being made, a handshake that lingered just one beat too long, not in warmth, but in calculation. The kind of calculation that says, before I know who you are, I'm already deciding how useful you might be. I remember sitting in a committee room for the very first time. The fluorescent lights hummed like restless insects. Papers shuffled. People laughed with the kind of laughter that doesn't reach the eyes. And I thought naively, beautifully, that I was entering a place where truth was spoken out loud. But then something shifted. Someone pulled me aside after the meeting, smiled. "You speak well," they said. "Just remember, don't ask questions that make people uncomfortable." I laughed it off. I thought they were joking, but days turned into weeks, and the bruise darkened. The silence after I spoke grew heavier. The side glances grew sharper, and the question kept whispering louder each time. Why does this place feel allergic to honesty? I realized something slowly, not all at once. The way a city's smog becomes visible only after you've lived breathing it too long. Politics wasn't designed for people like us, people who believe truth is the foundation of justice. Politics rewards the ones who treat truth like currency, not principle. And yet, I stayed. I stayed because I believed that somewhere beneath the noise and deals and smiles, there had to be a place for integrity. But what I didn't know in those early days was that integrity in the wrong rooms becomes a threat. And this was only the beginning. My brothers and sisters, let me take you back to the start. To the version of myself who walked into this world with more hope than caution, more faith than armor. I walked into politics like someone walking into a mosque for the first time in years, unsure, reverent, hopeful that I might rediscover something sacred. I believed in community. I believed in justice. I believed that if you saw a wrong and had even a shred of ability to fix it, you were obligated to try. And so I walked in with my heart unprotected. I remember the crisp morning air on my first official day. The sun wasn't even up yet, but I felt awake in a way I hadn't felt in years. I walked up the grand stone steps, tracing the grooves worn down by generations of people who had climbed them with their own dreams. I thought I was joining them, stepping into a lineage of public servants who wanted nothing more than to make life fairer. But inside was a different world. It wasn't the loud corruption you see in movies. It was softer, quiet, polished, like a smile that hides a knife. The first shock wasn't a scandal. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't even a hostile comment. It was the realization that everyone already knew the ending of the story, and I was the only one still believing in the beginning. They whispered names in hallways. They spoke of donors the way children speak of gods. They discussed communities as if they were chess pieces, movable, predictable, usable. And I still believing in people felt like I had walked into a room where everyone else had read the script but me. The first time I spoke up in a meeting, I saw it. A look, a small, almost imperceptible flicker in someone's eyes. Not curiosity, not respect, but inconvenience. A look that said, this one still believes. This one is dangerous. I didn't understand it then, but I felt it, a tightening in the room, a shifting of postures, a pause that lasted just long enough for me to know I had said something wrong, not morally, but politically. Because in that world, truth is only welcome if it's profitable. And still, I told myself I could change it, that I could be the exception. I had no idea what awaited me. My brothers and sisters, there comes a moment, a quiet, almost forgettable moment when the curtain falls for just 1 second. And in that second, you see the machine, not the visible one. Not the one made of podiums and press releases, but the hidden one, the machine behind the smiles. I saw it for the first time in a back room that smelled of old carpet and expensive coffee. A room where everyone's voice dropped half an octave, where laughter turned into strategy, where the walls themselves felt like they were listening. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't illegal. It was something worse. Normal. A colleague leaned back in his chair, fingers laced behind his head, and said, "We'll support this bill, but only if the right people get credit." Not because the policy mattered, not because the community needed it, but because every gesture had to feed the machine the pipeline of favors, influence, donors, endorsements, access. And that's when I learned the first rule nobody writes down. People don't exchange ideas, they exchange obligations. You support someone now, so they'll owe you later. You stay silent today, so they protect you tomorrow. You pretend not to notice the injustice happening across the table, because one day you'll need the person committing it. And I felt it, the slow closing of a fist around my integrity. The smiles were warm. The greetings were friendly. The handshakes were firm. But beneath them was a question everyone was asking, whether silently or aloud. Are you with us or not useful to us? One afternoon, after yet another meeting where people debated strategy but not morality, someone pulled me aside and said, "You're smart, but you need to understand how this works. Don't take things personally, it's just politics." Just politics. As if that phrase were a permission slip to abandon conscience. As if harm becomes acceptable once it's wrapped in procedure. I started noticing things I had missed. How donor names were spoken softly, reverently, as if reciting scripture. How community needs were discussed in past tense. We tried. We'll get to it. There's no appetite for that right now. Appetite. As if justice were a meal only served when the powerful were hungry for it. And the deeper I looked, the more I saw. The machine wasn't built to help people. It was built to sustain itself. Every smile had a price. Every alliance came with chains. Every truth needed permission before it could be spoken. And I realized painfully that the machine didn't hate good people. It simply couldn't use them. Because good people ask questions. Good people tell the truth. Good people refuse to trade humanity for access. And nothing threatens a machine more than someone who cannot be programmed. My brothers and sisters, there comes a day, a specific, unmistakable day when you learn the cost of saying no. And that day arrived for me without warning. It was a small meeting, not the kind with cameras or speeches or polished statements. Just a handful of people around a table, the kind of room where real deals are made because there's no public record of who stood where. A proposal was being pushed through, harmless on the surface, destructive underneath. It favored donors over tenants, influence over fairness. A policy designed not to solve a problem, but to maintain an illusion. Everyone in the room knew it. They didn't even bother pretending otherwise. Someone finally turned to me and said, "We need you to sign off. Just this once. You don't have to advocate for it, just don't block it. Just this once." A phrase used like anesthesia numbing conscience, one compromise at a time. I looked around the table. Eyes avoided mine. Some tapped their pens. Some stared at their phones. Some smiled, waiting for me to understand the unspoken script. But I didn't. I said the smallest word in the language. No. The silence that followed was surgical. A precise, measured quiet. Not shocked. Not angry. Just calculating. One person closed their notebook a little too slowly. Another leaned back with a sigh that carried more meaning than any argument could. Someone muttered, "He really doesn't get how this works." And there it was. The transformation. My integrity, which had once been praised as refreshing, inspiring, necessary, suddenly became an inconvenience. You see, people don't mind integrity until it interrupts their plans, until it blocks their shortcuts, until it insists on being present at the exact moment they need moral flexibility. That one no became a signal, a warning light, a reminder to the machine that I could not be relied upon to bend. And so the quiet punishments began. Calls that used to come daily stopped. Meetings I was always welcome at suddenly filled up. Allies who once applauded my honesty stopped making eye contact in hallways. No memo was issued. No confrontation occurred. But the political ecosystem has its own weather, and overnight, a cold wind began to blow. I learned something painful that day. In politics, integrity is only admired when it's ornamental. The moment it becomes functional, the moment it disrupts something, it becomes a threat. I walked out of that room realizing I hadn't made enemies by doing the wrong thing. I had made enemies by doing the right one. But the true cost, the emotional cost, was still waiting for me. My brothers and sisters, people assume the hardest part of politics is the noise, the shouting, the opposition, the public criticism. But that's not true. Noise can be survived. Noise can be ignored. Noise at least tells you that people are listening. The hardest part is the silence. After that, the quiet began to gather around me like fog rolling in from a cold ocean. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't confrontational. It was subtle, almost artistic in its precision. People still smiled at me, but the smiles ended 2 inches before their eyes. People still greeted me, but their voices carried the weight of obligation, not warmth. People still included me, but only in the rooms where nothing real was being decided. I had become present but irrelevant. There is a loneliness in that kind of exclusion that I wouldn't wish on anyone. Not because it hurts your pride, but because it attempts to rewrite your purpose. It tries to convince you that your values are naive, that your commitment is childish, that your principles are obstacles rather than anchors. I remember walking into a meeting where chairs were arranged in a neat circle. My name had been on the list, my presence expected, yet when I arrived, all the seats around the circle were filled except one, the one tucked against the wall, slightly behind everyone else. A message without words. You can be here, but you are not here. You start to question yourself in those moments. Am I making this harder for no reason? Is this what everyone warned me about? Is the fight worth the cost? There were nights I sat at my kitchen table, the city humming outside my window, wondering if I was foolish for believing politics could be a place for moral people. I would stare at my hands, exhausted, and think, maybe I'm the problem. Maybe good people don't survive here because they're not built for this world. But here's the truth I hadn't realized yet. The loneliness wasn't a reflection of my failure. It was evidence of my refusal. Refusal to bend. Refusal to play the game. Refusal to let the machine swallow me whole. And the machine knew it. But the breaking point, the moment where everything finally made sense, was still ahead of me. My brothers and sisters, every person who enters politics with good intentions carries a secret hope. The hope that they will be the exception. That they will withstand the pressure, survive the machinery, and somehow emerge with their integrity intact. But every good person also reaches a breaking point. A moment that is less dramatic than it is devastatingly clear. Mine came one evening in a community hall filled with folding chairs and fluorescent lights, the kind of room where real democracy happens, far away from the polished chambers where decisions are sanitized. A local family had come to speak. They lived in a building with unsafe conditions, leaks, mold, broken heat. They had been ignored by landlords, dismissed by agencies, bounced between offices. They came hoping that someone, anyone in that room, would finally help them. I listened. I promised to fight for them, and I meant it. But afterward, a senior official approached me with that familiar half smile that always meant trouble. You shouldn't get involved, he said. There are sensitivities around that building. The owners have relationships. He lowered his voice. Just leave this one. Don't make noise. Don't make noise. As if silence were a virtue. As if their suffering were an inconvenience. As if justice were negotiable. I told him, these people are living in danger. We can't ignore this. His smile faded. And then, with a tone colder than I expected, he said, do you want to survive here or not? That was it. The quiet ultimatum. The moment that snapped the last thread. Because in that instant, everything became painfully simple. Good people don't quit politics because they're weak. Good people quit because staying requires them to stop being good. I walked out of that room feeling something inside me break, not my resolve, but my illusion. The illusion that the system merely needed better people. No, the system needed people willing to be silent, willing to compromise their conscience, willing to trade their soul for access. And I finally understood why so many walk away. They don't leave because they're tired. They leave because they're told explicitly or implicitly that their morality is unwelcome. My brothers and sisters, after that night, something shifted in the deepest part of me. Not broken, clarified. Like a lens finally wiped clean after months of smudges and illusions. I began seeing the system not as a collection of bad individuals, but as an architecture, a structure designed to reward compliance and punish conscience. And that realization was strangely liberating, because once you understand the system, you stop blaming yourself for not fitting into it. You stop thinking your integrity is a flaw. You stop believing your loneliness is proof of failure. I began to see the pattern everywhere. Good teachers punished for challenging outdated curricula. Good officers ostracized for reporting misconduct. Good workers sidelined for speaking up about exploitation. Good neighbors dismissed for asking uncomfortable questions. Politics is not the only place where this happens. It is simply the place where the consequences are most visible. And yet, people pretend the system works just fine. They pretend the machine is neutral. They pretend those who leave simply weren't tough enough. But the truth, the quiet truth, is that the system survives because good people leave. Not because they are weak, but because the system knows it cannot bend them. I realized then that quitting is not always surrender. Sometimes quitting is testimony, a record of the fact that you are here and you refuse to be reshaped into something unrecognizable. But even in that clarity, I felt a question rising inside me. If the good keep leaving, what hope is left for the rest? 8. A different kind of hope, the ones who stay. Tot 400 words. My brothers and sisters, not all stories end with escape. Some end with endurance. Because even in the darkest corners of politics, you will find a precious few who remain unbroken. People who wake up every morning knowing they will face pressure, isolation, and quiet punishment and still choose to stand tall. I began to notice them. Not the loud ones. Not the ones who posture for cameras. But the ones who fight in small rooms, late at night, far away from applause. The ones who comfort families after meetings end. The ones who read every line of policy because they know real harm hides in the details. The ones who refuse to trade people's lives for political convenience. People who stay not because it is easy, but because they believe someone must. And in them, I found a different kind of hope. Hope not as a feeling, but as an action. Hope as endurance. Hope as resistance to the machinery of indifference. I once asked one of them, "How do you keep going? Doesn't it break you?" She smiled, tired, but unwavering, and said, "It only breaks you if you expect it to love you. I don't expect the system to love me. I expect it to fear my consistency." Brothers and sisters, that line stayed with me. Because maybe the work of good people isn't to be loved by the system, but to outlast its pressure, to confront its incentives, to reveal its contradictions, to stand so firmly in truth that even the machine must adjust its gears. And that is why I stayed. Not because I was stronger than those who left, but because their departure taught me something vital. Good people don't quit because the fight is hopeless. Good people quit because they fought alone. So let this be the final message I offer you. A message carved from every bruise, every silence, every quiet victory. If we want good people to stay in politics, we must stand beside them loudly, consistently, unapologetically. Because integrity cannot survive in isolation, but it can transform a system when it is supported by millions who refuse to look away. My brothers and sisters, the machine is powerful, but it is not invincible. And the day we decide to stand together, truly together, is the day politics becomes worthy of the people it claims to serve. And that is the day good people stop quitting. Final line, because hope, when shared, becomes power, and power, when honest, becomes change.